Can you believe one time I was afraid to tell people I was a mum? I took the pregnancy test and I was like, okay, tomorrow I'll just go to the hospital and figure it out. And I found myself at the GP, sat in front of the doctor being like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, what? Like, I was so scared to tell anyone that I was like scared to tell the doctor because I thought she was going to tell me off. I was like, I'm pregnant? Nobody asked me, what do you want to name your son? Nobody came to me and asked me that. Church is somewhere that you should go to feel healed.
Yeah.
Not to have added trauma or added anxiety. A lot of the things were kind of blurred, so you didn't really know if it was religion that they were teaching and preaching, or it was culture that they were teaching and preaching.
In your own words, who's Esther?
Oh God, don't do that.
Like, you're actually that girl. Love real women stories that help you grow? Hit subscribe and follow, and let's level up together. Now back to the episode. Welcome, I'm Paula Oyinkan, and this is the Paula Oyinkan Show, where our mission is to inspire women like you to be the best version of yourself at every stage of life. Today, I'm joined by the stunning Esther. She's an OG lifestyle creator, and I know that today's going to be a really good conversation.
Yeah, we've been chatting already, haven't we?
Yeah. We've got a lot to unpack.
We do.
But before we get into it, I'm going to get you to pick a card.
Okay. Pick a card, any card.
Any card. I love these conversation cards, and I know they're mine, but
Oh, these are yours?
I created these
No way,
myself.
these are so
Yes,
cool.
I
Okay.
did.
They've
got some great questions.
No, for real. Just try and get in.
See where it goes. There we go. So you read the question and then answer it.
Oh gosh.
Ooh.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? So to be fair, he didn't say it to me. He just kind of like put it out there. But it's be yourself. Everyone else is taken.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think in the industry that I'm in, it can be quite hard to be yourself because you might feel like you want to fit in. You might feel like you want to jump on trends and things like that. So that has always stuck with me. Yeah.
Do you feel like you are yourself with your content?
I feel as though I have definitely made more of an effort to be more of myself rather than trying to be liked or trying to be, I don't know, like digestible, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think now more than ever, and this is probably within like the last few months, I'm just like, you know what, this is me, this is all I can give, and if it's not for you, you can't be everyone's cup of tea.
That is very true. I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
So you've been doing content creation for a long time, and I know we're gonna like unpack a lot of stuff today, but I wanted to ask, like, how did you get into that? Like, what was the decision? Why did you decide to go into content creation?
To be fair, when I first started, I didn't even think it was going to be like anything that would be long term. It was just more, I was straight out of uni. Well, I was still in uni. And in my university, they allow you to like borrow equipment.
Okay.
And which is probably one of the main reasons why I was kind of able to start when I did. So you could borrow any kind of equipment, cameras, microphones, lights, anything, you name it. You could just go in there, sign it off, and they give it to you for however long you needed it for. And I just took the opportunity and went home, recorded a video. It was for YouTube. And at the time, there was no like Instagram. There was no, obviously there was no TikTok, but it was Musically before it was TikTok. So there was no TikTok. There was only Vine and YouTube. So you were either like your regular celebrity actor or singer or presenter, or you were on Vine. That was kind of the only social media platform where they were like your regular people creating content, and YouTube as well. And then people would ask me, oh, where'd you get your wigs from? How'd you do your hair? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? And I was like, I could just put it all on YouTube and maybe somebody will watch.
Yeah.
I just took a camera out from university, went home, filmed a couple videos. And then like one of my first ones literally went viral. Wow. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, why?
I was like, help me out. Because it was the idea that like I have to sit in front of a camera and like talk.
Yeah.
Like, how do I talk? And like, whoa, how am I supposed to sound? I grew up in Hackney, so I like on a regular day, I'm like this. I talk anyhow.
Yeah.
But then you have to present yourself in a way that's like at least like presentable in a sense. But I didn't. Whenever I do a video, I wouldn't watch it back.
Okay.
I didn't like how I sounded. I did everything about it was like, nah, I can't do this. There's no way. Everyone's gonna think I'm mad. And then the people that know me, they're like, what are you doing on the internet? Anyway, loved it after a while because then everyone was like, I saw your video.
Yeah.
Keep going. And that was one thing everybody was saying. And I've now looking back, I feel like that was kind of like God just being like, listen, there's something in this for you. Everyone that would be like, I saw your video, keep going. And it was always that statement, I saw your video on YouTube, just keep going. Saw your video on YouTube, keep going. And I'm like, okay. So I stopped for a year. Literally, I stopped for a year.
Yeah.
And then eventually, when I was done with uni and I was supposed to be looking for work, and I wasn't, I was diving further and further into YouTube. I was creating more and more content, different types of content, just seeing what like resonated with my audience and like what audience I could also attract as well. And it just really took off from there. And a year later, my sister asked, so how's the job hunt going? How's everything? And that was when I was like confident enough to be like, I'm not applying for jobs. I'm just going to do this full time. And she was like, oh, okay, well, if you're enjoying it, like, how can you make money from it? How can you do this and that? And that's how, like, I was confident enough to tell my mom and, like, the rest of my family that I was just going to do it full time. And the way I it's like I put my head in sand and everything. I lived and breathed YouTube videos.
Wow.
I learned how to edit. I self-taught essentially when it comes to editing and everything, like the back end of social media, because you don't have a choice. No one's teaching it back then because it's not as
readily available
as it is now. Like you can go onto Instagram and someone can literally show you how to edit a video on CapCut in 30 seconds. That wasn't available back then. You had to learn everything yourself or go to professionals. And I don't have money to pay any professional to teach me how to edit on Final Cut Pro, so I had to learn myself. So that's how I really got stuck in. It was just like taking that time. And if you want to do something, you have to live and breathe it. And if you want to like do it as a career, it has to be your air and water. Otherwise, you're not really gonna get far. It's like half-hearted. And I wasn't trying to do it half-hearted because I was like, I need to start earning money. I got a child. We gotta eat. So I was literally banging it out day and night.
I feel like you're speaking to me right now. Like, get it together. No, I feel like it's together, but at the same time I just feel like I could be doing a lot more to push what I'm doing. So I'm gonna take that on board. But I realized, like, I didn't even ask you, like, who are you? In your own words, who's Esther?
Oh God, don't do that. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. I am an extrovert. I am funny at times. I'm very emotional. And I'm also very grounded in where I've come from and the people that I like to keep around me. That's as much as I can tell you. Like, but I'm just me.
I feel like that's a lot though. It does.
Yeah.
You're very multifaceted. And I feel like let's just jump straight into the motherhood side of things. So you had your son when you were 17 years old.
And
were
he's
you
about to
pregnant
be
at 17? Oh,
can you believe it?
How does that make you feel?
It's crazy. Like I don't know where time has gone.
Yeah.
It feels like I have blinked and now he's going to be 17. And I always say like I've got really bad memory.
Yeah.
And my friends are like, stop saying that because you remember a lot of things. And a friend of mine actually, he says recently, he's like, you remember the things that matter to you.
Yeah.
But not that it doesn't matter. It's just that there was a phase in my life where like I just didn't know where anything was going. So maybe I've just completely blocked it out. But I don't remember his like 3 years old, 4 years old. Can't remember much about him being 5. Like a lot of it has just like gone.
Yeah.
And I've blinked and he's now going to be 17. It's insane. Like the small boy that used to like run around the house that my sister used to have on weekends. He's now babysitting my niece and nephew for my sister. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that makes me so emotional because like
My son's going to school next year. So
Reception.
still, yeah,
Okay.
2026. But anytime I think about it, I'm just like, "Ugh, okay, I'm not gonna think about this right now because it makes me so emotional. So to think
Yeah.
that like you've got a 17-year-old child, but I wanted to talk more about like your actual journey with it because
Mm.
obviously you're Nigerian, your
Yeah.
background. So getting pregnant at 17, what was that like?
Gosh, it was it was scary. It was very scary.
Yeah.
First of all, out of all my friends, I would have never imagined I would be the one getting pregnant. I So
Yeah.
when I was like, okay, so I'm pregnant. So then what happens now? Like there really is. And as much as I'm like 17 years ago, there wasn't this and there wasn't that, but there really wasn't.
Yeah.
There wasn't nowhere on social media you can go to like read anything or any like charities or any like community centers or anyone that you can kind of go to and be like, I'm 17, I'm pregnant and I'm scared.
Yeah.
What do I do? And I was really hoping that like my community, my church would have been where I could go to at least find one person that would be willing enough to just, okay, this has happened. Let's talk about a plan. Let's figure it out. And that, luckily, I had my sisters and my mum, whom also had to learn how to navigate that because she wouldn't have expected her youngest daughter to fall pregnant.
Yeah.
So she's trying to figure that out. So that had a knock-on effect on her marriage, had a knock-on effect on myself and my education and like my social life to a degree. It had a knock-on effect on like my sisters and how much they would have to like help me in a sense. But it was scary.
Yeah.
It was very scary. I didn't know what I was going to do. I took the pregnancy test and I was like, okay, tomorrow I'll just go to the hospital and figure it out. And I found myself at the GP, sat in front of the doctor being like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, what? Like I was so scared to tell anyone that I was like scared to tell the doctor because I thought she was going to tell me off. I was like, I'm pregnant. She's like, oh, you're pregnant. Okay, great. What's your date of birth? What's it? Just kind of goes on. And I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. So it's not everywhere that I'm like going to be hung, drawn and quartered. Like it's not by everyone around me.
Yeah.
So then I was given, I don't think they do it nowadays, but back then, back in my day,
Back in the old
right?
day.
They give you this like bounty pack that has like a
My
Pampers.
mum always mentioned this, but no, we didn't get that.
You don't get
no,
that?
I didn't get. I got a little booklet. That was it.
A green book?
No, we got the red book like for the baby once it was born, but it was just like a pamphlet for us to put all our paperwork
Let me
into.
tell you, back then they used to
didn't get
take
that.
care of you.
No.
They'll give you a bounty pack and it would have like vouchers. It had one Pampers sample.
Yeah.
It was maybe like the smallest size, just so you kind of know what to like. It was one.
Yeah.
And then it had like loads of like information leaflets, little booklets and things like that. And it was really handy.
Yeah.
And I would have to take that to my appointments because it had like my notes in there as well.
Yeah.
And then I got a green book as well. And in that green book, it would have like the size of your baby at different weeks. And then in there you could write notes and things like that. And then I put his scan picture in there. It was just it was by Pampers. It was just really hard to find that book.
No,
but they gave
we
you
didn't
so
get that.
much. So much. Now they don't do all of that stuff. I'm
They
sorry.
don't. No, there's a
I'm so
bounty
sorry.
app where you can get like the size of the baby, things like
Cute.
that, but it's not
Not a little
all
pack.
No, we don't get all of that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we were the chosen generation at that time. I mean, I guess this is when the NHS weren't so like, like tight on everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I told the doctors, got my folic acid, and I think the day after I told my big sister, and we had to rally around and figure out how we're gonna tell mum.
Yeah.
Told my mum. Like, so I actually didn't tell my mum. It didn't come out of my mouth.
Okay.
Up till now, I haven't said, Mum, I'm pregnant. Up to this day, I haven't told her that I was pregnant. So my big sister started off the conversation. She was like, okay, Mum, we need to, like, myself and my two sisters come into my mum's room. She sat on the bed like, what's going on? Everyone's looking all somber and sad. And I was definitely I was scared as heck.
I can imagine.
And my sister's like, okay, Mum, we need to tell you something, but don't be upset. We just have to figure out how to work through this. And then my other sister, and then my mom was like, hey, okay, what is it? What's the matter? What's wrong? All concerned and everything. My mom does not have patience. She was like, okay, what's wrong? What's the matter? And then my sister So that was my big sister that spoke.
Yeah.
My big sister, but the one just before me, she was like, one of us is pregnant.
Not one of us.
She's
No.
like, one of us is pregnant. And then my mom looked around and she's like, who? And then that sister said, the person that's pregnant hasn't spoken yet. I could have collapsed. Like, I wanted the ground to just swallow me in that moment. I was looking down the entire, I couldn't look at my mom. Oh, wow. And then she said, is that so? She looked at me and she was like, is that so? Like, yeah. I was 17.
Yeah.
17.
That is scary though.
It was so scary. But her concern was, we need to tell, she was like, who's the dad?
Yeah.
She knew who the dad was. Then she was just like, we have to tell his family.
Yeah.
And my mum, bless her, she really struggled because she didn't know how. She's not the best at communicating, and I don't think a lot of Nigerian parents are from that generation.
Agreed.
So she was just scared of like what the reaction was going to be from, his family. And she did. I mean, if my child was to come to me and tell me that they're pregnant at 17, I I would know what to do because I was in that position.
Yeah.
But I would still be scared.
Yeah.
It would run through my mind day and night. So she was just like, okay, well, you go and tell them. She didn't come with me to tell them because I guess she just couldn't deal with it. And it just went on from there.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, we're having this baby. That's it.
Yeah.
And 17 years later, here we are.
Here you are.
Here we are.
But you said you were like hung, drawn, and quartered. Is that what you said? I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where do you feel like you got that from? Because from the sounds of it, it sounds like your mum was fairly as supportive as she could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was very supportive. It was more the church
Yeah.
community. It was more there. And I guess also at that time they didn't really know how to deal with it. So my church was my ex-church, very spiritual, very cultural. Everything was grounded in like Nigerian beliefs and Nigerian culture, Nigerian like rules, and like and a lot of the things were kind of blurred. So you didn't really know if it was religion that they were teaching and preaching, or it was culture that they were teaching and preaching and enforcing. So a lot of the time it would be, oh, God said, they would always get spiritual messages. I went to a white garment church. Okay. God said, no, nobody should have abortion. Every other month, no woman should have abortion. No abortion. No this, no that. So then I now fall pregnant and I'm like, well, they gave a message like 3 months ago. Could it be for me? Like, was that message for me? And they gave a message a year ago, no one should have abortion. Was that for me? So I was like, yeah, I'm keeping this baby. I knew I wanted to have the baby, but I didn't know how to make that decision. I didn't have the support to make the decision. I was scared. I was like, okay, I guess the easiest thing would be to not have the baby. So that would make everybody around me happy and nobody would know my sin.
Yeah.
But like, why not? Right? Why not? A child is a blessing regardless.
Yeah.
So why not? If I'm more afraid of what everybody else is saying, that's not how I want to live my life, essentially. So the church was, boy, it was something. There was like conversations around whether or not I should be allowed back in the church. There was conversations around obviously like who's the father, and I was relatively new to that church as well. So not many people knew me like that. And it's just like, oh, who's the dad? Who's the dad? Where's the dad? The dad is not here. He's in Nigeria. Oh, this. And I guess I knew that everybody was talking about me behind my back.
Yeah.
But it would only be when my friends would tell me. So like some of my friends that I'm still friends with up till now.
Yeah.
So we've been friends like 23 years from when I was 11. So they would come and be like, oh, there was a meeting in church again.
And the meeting is about you?
They wouldn't obviously say my name, but it's like, okay, somebody's pregnant. We need to, no abortion. We need to fast and pray. We need to make sure our kids, and then they'll be doing like meetings and stuff with parents just to ensure like, are you talking to your children? Make sure they're not going out doing what they shouldn't be doing because somebody is pregnant. And it was just like things like that.
Yeah.
That just didn't need to be done because essentially you're kind of just trying to shame me without shaming me. And then I remember his naming ceremony. I was just so like ashamed of myself. I was just made to feel ashamed of myself.
Yeah.
I heard that they didn't want to give me because we used the youth part of the hall, well, the
Yeah.
youth church as where we did the naming. So we had the big main church and then we had the youth church and we used that part for the naming ceremony. And I remember that they didn't want to let me use it because it was a teenage pregnancy and I wasn't married and the dad wasn't around. So there was all of that chatter. So it was like my son's dad's family that had to fight that because I guess he's quite high up in church rankings, I
Yeah.
suppose. So he was able to sort of like fight that. And eventually they let me use it. But just sitting there, I was sat there and you know how naming certain Nigerian naming ceremonies go. Sit there with the baby with your other half and they pray, they read psalms, they do a little sermon and they say the names and they bless you and the baby and then maybe like Thanksgiving and whatnot. But it was me. I was 17. I was just sat there with my head down. I was crying my eyes out.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel so like that is one moment in my life that like if I could just go back, I don't know if you've seen that TikTok trend where
Yeah,
you go
they
back and you hug yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could go back to that moment and just give myself a hug and just be like, put your head up. I had my head down the whole time. And I remember looking over to one of my friends and the one time I looked up to just like look at her, she was like, smile. And I just put my head down again and I was like, I can't. I didn't even hold my son. Like
Yeah.
another church official, one of the elders in the church, she was holding him throughout and she sat there in place of the dad that couldn't be there. Whether or not to make it look, I don't know. And she just sat there anyway and she held him throughout and that was comforting, but I was just ashamed of myself. I was like, wow. And I feel as though it was because of how the environment made me feel.
Yeah.
Not because I woke up that morning and I was excited. I was like, I'm finally gonna like know his names and because at the time nobody asked me, what do you want to name your son? Nobody came to me and asked me that. It was just like, oh, we have names. Name me ceremonies on this day and let's go about our business. And everything was just kind of done for me, which I'm grateful for because I know there's a lot of things that I wouldn't have known how to navigate.
Yeah.
But everything was done for me and nobody asked my input. And I think that was another thing that really got to me. The fact that no one came to the mother of the child and said, what name do you have for your child?
Yeah.
Up until today.
No, that's actually so sad.
And
I feel
I
like
think
it's heartbreaking.
it's very heartbreaking. So
Yeah.
as much as I'm grateful for where I am today with my son and just how far we've come and everything that God has done for me, it's visible.
Yeah.
Like my blessing is on show for everybody at that church to see.
Yeah.
For everybody who doubted me to see. Like you can see that that God has done it for me.
Yeah.
As difficult as it was and as much as people thought like, oh, she's not going to make it. That's it. She can't go to university. She's not going to be able to get a job. She's just going to be somebody's baby mother for the rest of her life. Like, no, haha, joke's on you.
Yes.
I've been able,
Seriously.
like God has just done so much for me. But it's that moment there was like, okay, somebody could have asked me, what do you want to name him? Like I can still pick a name.
Yeah,
you know, I can still choose a name.
Yeah, that's your baby.
So yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
But I feel like you said, it's evident that you've built this amazing life for yourself. How did you do that despite everything that you were going through in that moment? Like, how were you able to build what you've managed to build despite navigating like stigma and what people thought of you and the shame that you were feeling in church, all of that? How did you come out of that?
I think it's God. Not I think. It's God.
Yeah.
Coupled with my personality,
Yeah.
my God-given talent, my God-given like gifts. I've always been like really girly. I've always been super confident. I've always been like, you need to get your hair done. I'll help you do it. You need an outfit. Like, come to my house. I'll give you some stuff to wear. Like, I've always been that girl from school. So the type of content I do, and I've always been very creative. I mean, I studied creative direction for fashion at university. So fashion as well as like creating content. kind of was always there within me.
Yeah.
So just being able to like listen to God and just waking up and like, okay, I can film a video. Like I had these lights in my house, in my mum's house, and I'd film videos like consistently. And I knew I wanted to like share things with people. And interestingly enough, when people used to ask me like, what do you want to do when you're older? I'd be like, oh, I want to be famous.
Mm.
I now I don't like the term famous.
Yeah.
But when people would ask me, that's what I would say when I was young. I want to be
Mhm.
famous. I couldn't sing. Can't. I mean,
It's
I
been
can
there.
act, but I
Mhm.
don't want to be an actress. I
Yeah.
don't want to be a singer.
Yeah.
So how did I want to be famous? I knew that I wanted to be hyper visible.
Yeah.
I didn't know the term. So I knew that I wanted people to know my name. I knew that I wanted people to recognize me. I knew I wanted people to see my talent, see my work, see my craft, see the things I could create. I knew I wanted to inspire people
Yeah.
in many different ways, but I just didn't know how I was going to get there.
Yeah.
So I always had that inspiration. I always had that idea, but I just didn't know how I was going to get there.
Mhm.
And I just believe it was God.
Yeah.
Not was, is,
Yeah.
you know, and being able to like listen to God and take direction and see things with a spiritual eye and listen with a spiritual ear rather than just like doing things for self-gratification. And as much as I was afraid, can you believe one time I was afraid to tell people I was a mum?
Oh. Wait, when you were creating content
Yeah.
or why?
Because of that shame.
Okay.
So it carried on.
Yeah.
I was like, people are going to think I'm like some dirty stop out. People are going to think I was just like doing nonsense at a young age. So I was just really afraid. And then the video I put out when I was like, I want you guys to meet someone, and I introduced him, the amount of love I got, I was like,
Yeah.
wow. And I think it was from that moment on, I was like, you don't have to carry that shame. And the shame isn't something that I created. It was something that other people
Yeah.
put on my back and made me
Yeah.
wear. It was almost like a cross that they nailed me to.
Mhm.
And that was the moment I broke free from it. I was like, I'm not going to continue being ashamed of this. This is a part of my life. And now I hope that I can inspire other young mums. And this is not me saying like, go get pregnant as a teenager, because it all works out. No, it's difficult, but like there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And it gets better as long, if you're religious and you're a Christian, trust and follow God, you know?
I love that you talk about God in this way. And I feel like your experience with the church could have really negatively impacted your relationship with God. But how do you feel like it impacted your relationship with God, if at all it did?
I think it negatively impacted my connection to a physical space when it comes to church.
Yeah.
So the idea of going to a church, or the idea of having such a deep connection with a set of people within a church. I think once I left that church, I still went to another CNS church that I helped set up. And interestingly enough, I was like part of the creative team. So I did all the videos, I edited all of them, I put them all on YouTube. So that still kind of followed me I never did it in my first church. But the second one, I was basically in charge of all of that stuff. Like I would bring my cameras and we'd do all of that stuff, interestingly enough. But after I left it there, I think that was where I was like, okay, I can't keep expecting to meet God only in church. I need to find God for myself, and I need to have a relationship with God for myself outside of this physical building, outside of this physical space. And salvation is personal. So as much as it did affect me, the first church and the second one, I'm so much more deeply rooted in the fact that like God is within me, not within a space. Obviously it's good to go there for the idea of community. It's good to go there for the idea of like supporting one another and your children growing together when you're able to make good friends in church. Like it's a beautiful thing. Some people even meet their life partners in church. But there are some scandalous things that goes on in some churches. And if that bothers you more, if you can't seem to look past the negative things that go on in certain churches and certain spaces, then maybe you have to remove yourself. And I knew that I found more peace not going to a physical building and not being a part of that kind of community. So I took the good with the bad, but I focused more on the good.
Yeah.
And I just made the decision for myself that, like, I'm not going to be part of this. I'd much rather just be at home, do my devotionals. Sunday, if I put on like a church service, fine. But I don't need to be tied to a physical church, in my opinion. That's just how I feel.
Do you feel like the culture in those churches was part of the issue as well? As in, I don't want to say, I'm not going to assume that you only went to Nigerian churches.
Predominantly, yeah.
Okay, so because I do feel like
Yeah.
being Nigerian, there is sometimes that mesh between actually this is our culture, this is our stance, but now we're almost preaching it like this is the word of God.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that has impacted your experience of church?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we would have like sermons in church, as much as they did a great job of, like the church was a great church. They did really good things for the community and for people within the church. I think they missed the mark on really touching the youth.
Okay.
And that was what many of us needed at the time.
Yeah.
I think every time we would kind of be, well, a majority of the time we would like have any sermon from an adult that would come, because we had our own separate church.
Yeah.
So whenever an adult would come to the youth church, it was almost like we're being reprimanded for something. And it's like, we need more than you just telling us off all the time. We need you to cater to the generation.
Yeah.
You can't preach to us the way you're preaching to the main church. We need you to really cater to us and like come down to our level and talk to us like in a way
Like
that
people.
we would understand. So they missed the mark on those things, and I think that's why a lot of us found it difficult to stay in that church. So now that my son was like, he got to a certain age and he was just kind of like, oh, the church, don't feel like I'm getting much from it. I could understand because I'd been there. So to me, it's like, so things haven't changed. So as great as the church is and what they do, I have kind of lost track of your question.
No, it's fine about like the culture. It's
Okay,
fine,
good.
honestly.
No, as great as the church is and what they do, I feel like that sense of like Nigerian culture and how everything is almost like a hierarchy in Nigerians is very much embedded in that church. So them certain things, it's like, okay, you're not gonna get a response from the youth, or like, that's not how you connect with us. That's not how you teaching these things in that way. Like, we're not gonna hear it because we're not sure if is this culture? Are you telling us because this is how you were raised? And these are the rules that you enforce in your household? Or is this what the word of God says? Like, which one are we? So it's almost like they would teach in a way whereby it was like discipline, but the word of God. It was very much, it was all over the place. And a lot of us left. Once we got to a certain age, we all just like, I'm not going back there again. But that's not to say that they're not touching some people, because I'm sure they are. They still have a huge congregation, but it wasn't for me, and it wasn't for a lot of the people who also left. Those lines were consistently blurred, consistently. And I imagine that they're still struggling with that today. Yeah.
What about people who are like, I don't want to say, oh, still in that church, because obviously I feel like to a certain extent, like you said, some people are being touched by it. But what would you advise somebody who's maybe at church and maybe they've gone through something where they're feeling that same sense of shame for whatever they've been through? What would your advice be to that person?
I think the first thing I would say is church is somewhere that you should go to feel healed.
Yeah.
Not to have added trauma or added anxiety. So if you go to that, if you're in any environment, it could be a relationship, it could be a place of work. If you go somewhere that's not doesn't feel fulfilling, or you don't feel like you're not just your spiritual, but your physical doesn't feel at peace,
Yeah.
then it's kind of doing you more harm than good. And this is obviously not for every church. I can't speak for
No,
every
of course
church.
not.
Of course
Yeah.
not. But there are places where, like, a church that I went to recently, I say recently, but this is probably like 4 years ago now.
That's not reason at all.
But the last church I went to,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed going there. There were some things that I could see that were kind of like similar to my old church.
Yeah.
But for me, what was good was that I would go, attend service, do what I needed to do to connect with God, and leave. I wasn't adding anything personal. I wasn't trying to be part of any teams. I wasn't doing anything where anyone would affect my mood or anyone would have anything to say about my personal life or anything like that, especially if you don't know me personally.
Yeah.
It was just more like do service and go home. Praise the Lord, go to my house.
Yeah.
It was more that. But so I would say if you feel as though you're in a church that doesn't necessarily, you're not growing spiritually, you don't feel fulfilled when you go there, you don't feel like your prayers are being answered, in the sense that like you're going there and you just feel like more hindered than you do growing, then maybe it's not the right place for you. And there's so many churches out there that people can explore, but perhaps that one's not the right one for you. But I'm never gonna preach on churches. I'm not been to church how many years now. So I don't know. But I just think any environment, if you don't have peace or you don't have a sense of fulfillment, then
it's not for
it's
you.
not for you.
Yeah. Do you know what? I would say I don't think I've had a negative experience like that with church. The church I go to at the moment, I do really like it. But one thing I would say is that I do still think it's important that if you're going to a church, that you are also having your own relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes people just like, they have a pastor and it's like, oh yeah,
worship the
but Prophet Jacob said, like, you know, and actually you need to go back to your word yourself and just ask God for discernment surrounding that. So I think it is really important. Like, yeah, church is great, church is good. And I love going to church, to be honest with you. But we also have to remember that church is made up of people.
Yes.
One. So if somebody offends you to a certain extent, I think you just gotta, again, pray for that discernment. Like, is this something I need to like leave this church over, or is it something I just need to let them go about their business?
Church
you
is
know,
not for church is not for extracurricular activities. Please. When it starts getting to the point where you're being offended by somebody, then we need to be checking the people in the church, because why are we spending so much time in that environment that you can even offend someone? No, seriously, that's when we're taking it too far.
Yeah.
No, like that there shouldn't be room for that in a church. It's church. It's a holy place. It's where the Spirit of God dwells.
Yeah.
So if
That's
somebody has
true.
gone there and offended someone, spending too much time there. Like that person needs to go back to God and
And reassess everything.
reassess
It's
everything,
true.
because I'm just and I
Let's
think that
talk-
was another thing.
Oh, sorry, no, go on.
No, sorry, that was another thing as well about, my time in churches. I was spending way too much time there.
Okay.
When service was finished, we'd be hanging around, doing all of, let's be going home. Seriously,
Yeah.
service, and let's be going home. Let's not leave room for
people to be offended and
any of those extras. Like let's check our attitudes at the door. We're going into church. This should be an environment where everybody should feel welcome.
Yeah.
Everybody should feel safe, most importantly, so that they can go and get what they need from God and go about their week.
Thank you. No, it's
don't
fine.
thank me.
For real, Sister Esther.
No,
Thank
stop
you.
it.
Thank you, Sister.
No, please.
No. But I wanted to talk about your resilience, because it's like now I don't want to say this is the end product, because obviously it's still all a journey,
absolutely.
but obviously you've had to have a lot of resilience over these last 17 years to keep pushing, to keep going forward. So how have you managed to be resilient?
Oh gosh. I reckon I just keep going. I think I just keep going. I don't even look at, when I sit down and like have conversations about it and what I've been through and stuff, then it's like, wow, it was kind of a lot.
Yeah.
And when I start to unpack how young I was when a lot of these things were happening to me, then I can like, okay, wow. So I know that like that definitely had an effect on me, because it feels so fresh every time I think about it and every time I talk about it. And back then there was no such thing as trauma. What's trauma?
Yeah.
There was no
Especially as a
such thing.
Nigerian, nobody's talking about trauma.
No one's talking about trauma. No one's talking about mental health. No one's talking about mental wellness. So it's like you go through things, you just go through them and you continue, isn't it? I think I kind of had that mindset as well. Like, okay, it's happened. Let's keep going. Let's keep it pushing.
Yeah.
And I was so determined to make a point that I wasn't going to be pregnant at 17. Look at her now.
Yeah.
I in a negative way. I did not. Because my dad also, like, he was very much against the idea of me like having a baby so young. And for him, when I got onto my course at university, I was like, he has to come to my graduation. Because he was like, who's going to marry her? She's not going to finish university. She's not going to get a job. She's not going to do this. It's like having a child young is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
Like, guys, relax. I wish I could go back and be like, will you relax? Daddy, chill. Seriously, it's not a death sentence. So I looked forward to my graduation so much. And I made him pay for all those photos.
Okay.
You know, they're expensive.
They are.
I made him
They
pay for the
are.
pack.
And the gown?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of them.
Fantastic.
I was like, I'm graduating. You're coming.
Yeah.
This is how much the gowns are. And then on the day when we took the pictures, have to say my graduation pictures are the best. I was with my siblings. Siblings, try me. They're the best. No, seriously. When they're hung up in my mum's house, I'm like, yeah, that eats.
I like
Mine
that.
are the,
I
I have
do.
to say, mine are the best. So they took the pictures and everything. When I went to the computer and I was like, that pack. That one.
What was your dad like in graduating? Was he like,
was
that
so-
proud father?
Yeah, he was so
Oh,
proud.
yeah.
He was so happy. I took my walk across the stage. Like I savored every moment. So I
Yeah.
wanted him to capture as many photos of me walking across the stage in my gown, all
Rightly
of that.
so.
So the pack of pictures, I was like, you can have one, Mum can have one, I can have one, Stephen can have one. That's my sister. I was like, yeah, so we're gonna need that one, that pack, the expensive one. Because I just wanted to prove a point that like it wasn't a death. Like, look, it
Yeah.
wasn't a death sentence.
It's not. It's not a death sentence.
And he's the same person now that goes around that's like, so somebody sent me a message and they said they were at a party and they were sat at a table with a man who was going on about his daughter and talking about his daughter, how much, he's so proud of her and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And then he pulls out his phone and shows a photo to somebody at the table, and it was me. And then she was like, I had to message you because if your dad hasn't told you, he's very proud of you. He sees what you do. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's really sweet. Like that's nice to know. But I think it was just looking forward to moments. And I know you're not supposed to like live to try and prove people wrong or whatever, but I had a point to prove.
Yeah.
I had a point to prove because 17-year-old me didn't know where life was going to turn, like how life was going to end up,
Yeah.
how things were going to turn out. But I definitely had a point to prove. And I really didn't want to let my mum down as well
Yeah.
because she sacrificed so much. So now I say to my son, whenever he does anything in college or like he's slacking or whatever, I'm like, I was in college at 17. I was pregnant with you. I was like, I was still going to college.
Yeah.
I wasn't late. And he was like, you weren't late. I wasn't late and I was pregnant with you. I'm like, so what's your excuse? So now I
No
can be using
excuses.
that one.
No,
I
it's
go,
true.
so even
There
now
are no
after,
excuses.
when he gets to uni and he's like, oh, you.
I had a 1-year-old baby.
I had a 1-year-old. That 1-year-old was you, and I still went uni, and I still graduated. I'm gonna be using that forever and ever.
I don't blame you because
But-
it's a good excuse because it's not
Yeah.
easy work.
It's not.
It's really not.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just wanted to, and I have like, I see my life, and I'm like, I know how I want to live. I know how I want to enjoy my life. How can I get there? I need to work hard.
yeah.
I like nice things.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
I like nice things. And in order to get to a point where you're comfortable, like you have to work. You
Yeah.
have to.
You
I
do.
can sell feet pics, but I don't know if I'm quite ready to sell feet pics yet. I don't know if I'm there. I still need a pedicure. I could, I could do other things. Like fans only, but I don't want to. I'm happy to share my creativity and inspire people and like create content. I love creating things. So I think for me, that was like, I have a point to prove. How can I do that? I can use my talent, I can use my personality, and I can use my God-given gifts. And I'm just so blessed that I can do that with the works of my hands. Rather than, working for somebody else.
You proved that point, girl. You're proving it every day.
Thank
Honestly, you really are. You're such an inspiration.
Oh, no.
But we are running out of time. Yes, we are.
Girl, you haven't even got to your second card.
Did I even flip the thing? I told you we might not even get to these.
Oh,
but for somebody that's watching this, especially women, what's one thing that you want them to take away from this conversation?
Believe in yourself. No, and you're saying that seriously.
No, for real.
No, like believe in yourself. Any idea you have, any plan you have for yourself, even if you feel like, oh, this idea is like too big, it's little by little. It's like little building blocks. It's step by step. Like I'm sure this didn't come to you like overnight. It took work. You had to gather your team. You had to gather the ideas. Even this, you had to put the design together. You had to put the questions together, bit by bit by bit. And that's how I've been able to get to where I am today. It's bit by bit, from loaning the camera to owning a bunch of cameras. Now where I can create my content with. It's bit by bit. So believe in yourself. And there's another thing that I'm really sticking to nowadays, and that's there can be day one or one day. Day one is the day you actually start, and one day just may never come. You could keep saying, oh, one day. That one day may never come. But day one is the day you actually begin, and you put pen to paper, or you put the idea on that mood board, and you just get going with it. So that's it.
That is
My
it.
stomach is trying to enter the chat.
I'm sorry.
No, honestly. I was like, excuse you.
Sorry, but you said that's it, as if that wasn't just like a big poof.
Was it?
Yeah, that was great advice, honestly.
It's something that I'm also trying to like live by, because I've got other ideas. I've got things that I want to hopefully do by the grace of God. And it's literally, okay, is today day one, or are you still going to be doing one day? And I'm still on one day. By the grace of God, one day it would be day one.
Getting the sign. I gotta wrap it up. I'm sorry. How do we connect with you? How do we connect?
Oh, I'm all over the place. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, if you like, Facebook, YouTube. But it's Esther. Estagram's on Instagram, Esther on TikTok, EstareLIVE on YouTube, and I think Esther Pins on Pinterest.
Ooh,
so random. I love a Pinterest. Get on Pinterest.
I do like Pinterest. Okay, we're done. It's a wrap. But no,